Hello everybody, my name is Nairi. I'm running an adoption support channel. Please hit the subscribe button in the corner of the screen if that's something that you're interested in. It may be that you're curious, or it may be that you are on the pathway for adoption, or that you already have an adopted child. You will find this channel very useful. So today we're going to talk about therapeutic parenting in relation to a child that might be showing aggression or have sort of violent tendencies. And this is something that's been brought up by a viewer, questions asked. So first of all, what we're going to do is explore why aggression might be happening with an adopted child or even fostered child, so what might bring it on. Then we're going to have a look at the questions that you need to ask around those things that are happening, so things that you might ask yourself to prompt some understanding of why things are happening. Then we're going to have a look at what you would do in the middle of a meltdown, the things that you can do to alleviate the situation. And finally, we're going to kind of have a look at some pace type parenting techniques that you can use in between when those things are happening. So it's going to be quite a busy and long video, so I hope that you'll find it very informative. So first of all, what I would say to you is I've got two adopted sons myself, and one of them shows aggression on quite a regular basis, and there have been times when it has been pretty bad. So I feel like I can speak from experience, and also having fostered as well and come across those behaviours. So let's get on with the points as to why a child might show aggressive behaviour when they've been adopted. So first of all, and something that in a way you can't rule out, is you might have a childhood condition. So childhood conditions such as autism and ADHD can lead to aggressive episodes by virtue of the fact of the way those conditions work on the brain and work on the body. So that's the first thing to consider. Is there a chance? And I don't want you to overread into that and start looking at a child and thinking that they might have all these things, but I'm saying that that could be something that could lead on to aggression. Another thing that might be happening is frustration over communication. So it's well known that adopted and fostered children can be behind on their communication, get very frustrated trying to explain to you what is happening. And it might be that they can't get that across to you, and then that is then leading to frustration, which then leads to aggression. Another thing that they might be experiencing, or are very likely to be experiencing, is fear of abandonment. Now, they may not be able to explain that to you or put that into words, but that fear of rejection that's already happened from losing a birth family and from moving on from foster families, that might still be a very underlying problem for them, and sometimes that can then lead to some strange feelings that they just really don't understand. Another thing that they may have is triggers or memories from the past, which again is linked to fear of abandonment, but something that they cannot explain to you. So a sight or a smell or something that's happened to them might trigger something from the past, and they have no idea why. They can't put it into words, they can't explain, or they might actually have literal memories. So somebody that looks like a certain thing, someone who's maybe abused them in the past and looks like that, might trouble them, might bring out this fear, which would then lead to aggression. Insecure attachment, which many of our children experience, whether they're fostered or adopted, can then lead to them not trusting you. So even though you think you might be really offering them a very loving and kind home, sometimes that closeness and that you would expect them to trust you, that insecure attachment might bring out other feelings, again, which they can't cope with, they don't know what they are, and again that can bring out that kind of anxious and then aggressive trait in them. They've seen aggression within family homes and they're replicating that, or they've seen aggression on the telly, or they've seen it with peers, and they're not able to control those feelings and they want to play that out. And finally, one that is so often overlooked, they're getting very tired. So they've had a transition, they've moved from preschool, they've moved from school, and they're starting all over again with something, and they're super tired, or they've just dropped their nap during the day because they won't go down for a nap, and they're super tired, and that's causing them to be aggressive. So those are lots of reasons. That's not all of them, there could be more things there, but those some things for you to think about. So what I suggest is, if you've got this situation, you think about your child, and could any one of those things be resulting in this, or could more than one thing be resulting in this? Sit down, reflect, write down your thoughts, share them if you have a partner or another half that you can talk to, someone you can talk to. Sit down and think, could it be any of those things? The next thing to ask yourself is, are there patterns? Now, often it's really, really hard to see any patterns or triggers, and it might take you a long time. It may take you months or years to work out what the patterns and triggers are. And over time, we've worked out what it is with our son to the most part. But then it could be a different day, a different time, a different experience, and that's not the trigger. So it can vary. So again, don't hold things too tightly in a box. If you think you know what the trigger or pattern is, that's great, but you might be on a different day and another experience, and it doesn't pan out that way, and that's okay. I think with therapeutic parenting, the main thing to consider is that every day is different, every situation is different, every child is different, and so even if you think you've worked out the pattern, you've got to be flexible. Therapeutic parenting means flexibility all of the time and reacting to the moment. So here's some questions that you can ask yourself. When does it normally happen? So is there a time of day that you notice it happening? Does it happen after particular programs on the telly, activities, associates, social occasions? So are there things that you can see that happen and it always seems to happen afterward? Events in the house, so regular routines that really cause those triggers, like bedtimes and meal times are really common ones. Children who've got a lot of anxiety over food, a lot of anxiety over being left on their own in the bedroom overnight, and night time, those are really, really common triggers. And again, it may not happen during the time, it may happen a couple of hours leading up to it, so have a look at that. Do you see that happening towards certain people? It could be people that you think they like, but afterward there seems to be a bit of a meltdown, a bit of a blow up, and you don't really know why. But again, it's important to track that. Is it when you ask for certain things to be done? So you want something to happen and they seem to blow up at you and get aggressive with you when you ask them to do a certain thing in their room, or come down from their bedroom, or tidy their clothes up. Is it being asked to do something? So is this potentially about control on their part and losing control as you're asking them to do things? Now, during the meltdown, this is what everybody wants to know, is what you do. Now, let me just say to you that we've just been away on holiday and we left our boys for a few days with our very, very capable daughter and son-in-law, and our son had a meltdown while we were away. No surprises there, to be honest. That trigger is fear of abandonment. It's obvious that we're away, we don't go away ever, hardly, and the fear of not having us there. And no doubt, though I've not checked with my daughter, the meltdown would have been because he wanted to do a certain thing to kind of block out what was going on. Probably wanted to spend more time on a screen, or wanted to go somewhere or buy something, and probably they said no. So it was very much marked by the couple that were looking after him, that he was completely out of control and they didn't know what to do. And I think it's very easy for us to think we're the only ones who can't cope with meltdowns, we're the only ones who can't cope with aggression, but there are so many adopted children who suffer from aggression and families that need to cope with it, that you will never be the only one. So please don't worry if you're experiencing it, but this is some things that you can do to help yourself, and it may be that one of these things works and a lot of them don't, or you need to use a combination. For some people, when the child is having a meltdown, the child prefers the adult to walk away from the situation. The child prefers there not to be any confrontation, and for the adult not to comment, but for them to walk away and let the child to carry on with the meltdown. Another thing that you can do with your child is take them to an area where you know it's safe, where you know the meltdown and the aggression can happen, because they can't harm themselves or you. So there might be an area in the house or the garden where you can go and it can happen, and you can let it happen. And it doesn't matter how loud it is, how volatile it is, you can let it carry on. For others, and this is for us, this is what happens for us, we'll wait for a break in that meltdown, we'll wait for a break in the aggressive behaviour, and we'll go straight in for a hug or a touch, and that always works for us. And so immediately the child is broken out of that moment, and then they may respond well to you coming in to try and make that physical light touch on them, and that might break the moment for them. Now, when it comes to therapeutic parenting, a lot of parents struggle with that. They think that means that you're condoning the behaviour. But as you see, as I explain later, you're not going to condone it, you're just breaking the moment. You're trying to stop that behaviour from escalating. So perhaps this is so out of control that you're at risk of being hurt, and so there's a couple of things you can do. You can either have somebody to call on that you know is strong-minded and resilient and won't mind kind of seeing what's happening, that you can call into the house. And sometimes children will just stop when somebody else is there. So imagine you invite your mum to come over, or your uncle or a friend that the child has quite a lot of respect for. When that person arrives, sometimes that will be enough to just break the moment. Or it might be, if you have a partner or someone that can support you, if you're the one being targeted, that you go to that person's house. You say very clearly to the child, I really can't tolerate the fact that you're throwing punches at me or you're hurting me. I'm going to go and spend some time with. And every time it happens, you do that, and they know that you're going to do that, because couples do find sometimes there'll be one of them that's targeted. In our house, that's me, and so sometimes I will have to leave the house so that the behaviour de-escalates and that I get away and I'm safe, and you may have to do the same. It might be as well that you have someone that you can bring over to the house that not only just comes when this happens, but actually can help you to talk the child down. Some children will listen to reason when they're aggressive and they're violent. Some children will blank any type of conversation you have with them. Again, in our situation, we're blanked. We can't have a reasonable conversation during a meltdown, so we don't even try. And so that's what I'm going to move on to now, is once you've calmed the situation down by using one of those methods, hopefully, then you deal with what's happened for the behaviour. So you're not saying to yourself, I'm therapeutically parenting, so I'm going to calm this situation down any way I can. You know, I'm going to give my child a cuddle, I'm going to call nanny over, I'm going to go off for a nice walk and come back, and it'll all be done and finished. We don't need to talk about it, because now comes the point where you do need to talk about it. And this is the bit where you can use your paced parenting. So if you've not seen my other videos, there are a good couple of videos in my therapeutic parenting playlist that talk about paced parenting, what it is and how to break it down and how to use it in different situations. But I'm going to talk to you now about how to use paced parenting in this situation where you're having a child that's regularly aggressive with you. So you know that you have a problem with escalating aggression and violence, or you can see that it's going to happen, or you already have it. So in between those episodes, when your child is really calm, when your child is not in that place of feeling anxious, fearful, or all of these other things that I've suggested could be bringing them to this point, this is when you need to work really, really hard to establish what you think it is that actually is the deep down rooted cause of the situation. And that can take months to get to the bottom of, but it is possible to do it. So in between, paced parenting, playful, acceptance, curious, empathy, in a nutshell, that's what it means. You can use playfulness to the sense that you can be role-playing with different books and figurines and things, and you can use a little bit of humour, although it might be difficult for you to do that if you're getting upset over it, where you're play acting certain things out and you're showing one of the figures or one of the characters in the story to be quite aggressive, and then you're kind of talking to your child about how that might make the other person feel, and getting them to see, which they probably will if they're over a certain age, that actually the person who's perpetrating the aggression is actually them, and get them to reflect on how the other person might be feeling. Now your child might not be able to do that, but you are trying to get them to understand that aggression and violence is very unpleasant and can make people feel very uncomfortable. And it might well be that from that scenario your child could start talking about how it is, what the types of things are that are making them feel that they want to get, you know, aggressive. You can use teddies to do that as well if your child's a little bit younger. Teddies are also very useful to talk to, as if you're talking to the teddy, you must have seen this before, as if they are actually your child, but you're talking to the teddy about things. So what you're really trying to do is getting the child to identify that they are in fact behaving in that way. Even though they don't understand why, they may not understand the full import or seriousness of it, they are getting to grips with the fact they are actually doing it. Now you might want to remind them at this point, and again, this is part of therapeutic parenting, which is very, very difficult when you are very low and you're very sad and you've been upset about the way you've been treated, but to always remind them in between these episodes that no matter how bad it gets, because we've had the situation where we are deliberately being pushed away and we're deliberately being goaded to see if we're going to kind of give up on everything, and sometimes as a child becomes more confident in a way, they will do that more. You need to remind them that they're going to be accepted no matter what. I know that we've spoken to our son and said many times, it doesn't matter what you do or how bad it gets, nothing's ever going to happen to you. You're never going to leave here. You're always going to be accepted. However, wouldn't it be nice to have a family life where that wasn't happening? Wouldn't it be nice if we didn't have to go through that? So in between, you're using the accepted part of PACE to make sure they know that. But then comes the curiosity. Huge amounts of guesswork might have to happen here. You may really not understand what it is, even though you've done all this groundwork that's actually setting this off. And so you're going to be curious, and you're going to be trying to ask them what the root cause is in a way that kind of they understand. They may not be able to tell you what it is. This is the thing, often they can't. So you kind of have to use very simplistic guesswork, and you might be saying to them things like, I think you're getting really tired because you've just moved to a new classroom. I think you may have friendship problems. Could that be the case? I think that you're worried that me or dad or dad or mum or whoever it is that you are as a couple or a single adopter, that we're not going to be there for you, or that you might lose us. I think you might be worrying about the fact that you can't fit in necessarily with the relatives in this family. All these things, just guess and try to ascertain a little clue about what it might be, and then you've got something to work with. Also, another way that you can do things to help your child evolve their emotional well-being and to try and sort of let you know why these things are happening is, at the end of the day, if you don't have a base to start with, you don't know why things are happening, you can't begin to help them, is to say to them that when you are upset and angry, that you've had similar feelings. So kind of describe to them how it feels for you when somebody lets you down or says something nasty about you, what you feel inside, how sad it makes you feel, and how you want to shout and scream and get angry about it because you can't put it right, and try to let them see that you also have those emotions. But of course, as an old adult, you've learned that sometimes you can't hit out, you can't scream and shout, and get them to understand that they're not on their own, that everybody has angry feelings, but people do learn to control what they do with them. Now, regardless of all of this, and regardless of all of this therapeutic parenting, I think what's really important is there are consequences. Now, you have to be really careful with this because it depends on the age of your child. If you've got a really young child that's 3 and hitting out, you obviously can't bring in consequences that are too dramatic, and you've got to be realistic about what they understand about what they're doing anyway. But if you've got a child that's getting older, they're over 5 and they're beginning to demonstrate this behaviour on a regular basis, they're not really showing any remorse for what they're doing, but you think they have an awareness that it's not right, then there still has to be consequences, but they have to be in the moment. They can't be when they're having a rage, unlikely, but as soon as you have that calm time, you would need to go back and say, this is what's happened today, so we can't now go to Nanny's for tea, or this is what's happened today, and you threw this across the room, so I don't think you should be allowed to have this extra fun time doing this thing. Don't be too hard, but let them know that you are not going to just accept the behaviour, because you're going to accept them. You've told them this over and over again, but you don't want them to accept that they're going to hit you. You don't want them to accept that they're going to hurt you, that they're going to make you cry. You want them to understand that you don't accept that, and that there will be consequences as a result. But make them in the here and now as much as you possibly can. Don't say to them, because you did this to me today and you hit me today, then tomorrow we're going to do such and such because of that. Try to make it the same day consequence if you possibly can, or make it so simple that it's absolutely obvious. So say you were going to go out for a treat and now that's not going to happen. You were going to go for a special trip, now that's not going to happen, but always say to them, but we will rebook that trip, we will rebook that treat tomorrow or the next day if we don't have any more of this behaviour. So it's a case of kind of trying to keep things really, really tight and really clear, that child is 100% understood the reason why you're putting the consequence in. But you have to make sure that when you are putting consequences in place, the child is fully understanding what bit it is that you're putting consequences in place for. So I hope it's helpful. If it is, please subscribe. Check out my channel where you'll find stuff about adoption and parenting, and you will find stuff about adopted children's behaviours. Again, I'll put a video at the end for you on one of those behaviours for you to follow through. And thank you for watching.